Aye.
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 We have minutes for March 1st. Thank you. We move to item B on our agenda, 2021 Storm Drain CCTV Inspection Assessment Bid Award. And that goes to Mr. Ken Smith. Ken, the floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, committee members, council members. I'm here for the 2021 Storm Drain CCTV Inspection and Assessment Bid Award. Also, should the City Council award the 2021 Storm Drain CCTV Inspection and Assessment Project the lowest responsible bidder? There were 5 bids that were opened on March 19th, 2021, and the lowest was for Ames Companies with a total bid on 4 schedules for $401,387.04. There's a project map of the area for 2021 Storm Drain CCTV. You can see the bottom right shows the schedules A through D. Just a quick overview of the budget. We were able to award schedules A, C, and D with contingencies and construction management and inspection for a total of $324,696. Our total project funding around $328,864. So our options: option 1, award the 2021 Storm Drain CCTV Inspection and Assessment Project to Ames Companies, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $281,122.24, and approve a 5% contingency of $11,055.76 for a total of $292,178, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. 2, reject the bids and direct staff to rebid the project and return to committee for further action. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to April 20th, 2021 City Council consent agenda for approval. Some questions?
All righty. Thank you, Ken. Any committee members have any questions? Seeing none, Council President Honda.
Thank you. Is it possible to see the map again?
Sure.
So Schedule B will not be done this year, is that correct?
Correct. We didn't quite have the budget to incorporate it all, but the plan would be eventually to do that portion. Get the north half that is not covered in colored shading in 2018. So it's just trying to finish up what we have left.
Is this normal to not be able to do all of the schedules?
Yeah, we have quite a bit of pipes, and it's pretty expensive project to get them all done. We were, I think, a similar budget on the first half, so it's quite a bit of area to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see or hear any. I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the April 20th, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Is there a motion? There's a second? I'll second it. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Moore, are you on? Okay. I think he's on there. Okay. Well, there's a motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by myself. Hopefully, Martin, you're on there. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 3-0. Item C on our agenda, the Washdot Operation Maintenance Agreement for Adaptive Traffic Control System, as Mr. Perez. Rick, you have the floor. Is Rick?
You're muted.
There he is.
Rick, you're muted.
Technology.
There we go. Is that better?
There you go.
Ah, finally. All right. Well, good evening, Chair and council members, Deputy Mayor. So I'm here to talk about our Washdot operations and maintenance agreement for the adaptive traffic control system. The policy question is, should City Council approve the proposed interagency agreement with Washdot as part of the adaptive traffic control system project? So the project itself has been funded by 3 different grants for 3 different phases. First one was $800,000 grant of congestion management air quality grant from Puget Sound Regional Council. Phase 2 was $900,000 grant, safety grant from Washington State DOT. And phase 3 was another congestion management air quality grant for another $800,000, which we are matching with $875,000 in real estate excise tax and impact fees. The ongoing annual operating cost for this agreement is estimated at $20,000, which is already included in the traffic maintenance operating budget. So those phases, phase 1 consists of pretty much the 320th corridor in the city center area. Phase 2 is 99 South corridor. And then phase 3
Hey, Rick,
is...
before you go any further, is there a presentation you have up?
Yeah, that's not coming up?
No.
Oh dear.
You started going over figures. I said, okay, there's no presentation.
Uh-oh. Yeah, come on back. So let's see.
Go ahead and end the meeting with, or close out of the PowerPoint
Okay.
and show. Go back to Zoom. Go share screen.
Oh, I thought I did that.
And then you can do your WS dot right there.
Okay.
Yep, share.
All right.
And then you can do beginning on the top left.
There you go.
All right.
Top left.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah. So would you like me to start over? Or?
Yes, please, if you could.
Okay, sure. So policy question is, should the council approve the proposed interagency agreement with Washdot as part of the adaptive system project? Financial impacts, we have 3 different phases funded with 3 different grants. $800,000 twice in congestion management air quality grants from Puget Sound Regional Council, and $900,000 with a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant through Washington State DOT. And the city's match is $875,000 in real estate excise tax and impact fees. So the annual operating cost for this agreement is estimated at $20,000 a year and is already included in the traffic maintenance operating budget. Oh,
Start the slideshow.
yeah, I should do that, huh?
Yep.
All right. There we go. So here's the 3 phases. Phase 1 is the 320th corridor and city center area. Phase 2 is everything south of that, east of First Avenue. And phase 3 is to the north, east of First Avenue, along 99 and Military Road primarily. So a couple of the signals in this system are not ours. We have 3 county signals here, 31st along Military Road, 31st, 320th, and Peasley Canyon at 321st. And then 5 that are owned by the state. 2 at the ramp junctions on 320th, 1 at the Ram junction on Highway 18, and the flyover ramp junction on Enchanted Parkway, and then Enchanted Parkway and Milton Road. So the subject of this agreement is the 5 Washdot traffic signals. So the agreement would commit the city to operate and maintain those signals and the street lights that are connected to that traffic signal. So a few changes from the way they've been operating up to this point is we would be required to use Washdot standards for some signal timing parameters. They are not significantly different from Washdot, and I don't think anybody but a traffic engineer would notice them. The idea here is also to minimize the off-ramp backing up onto the freeway main line, which we attempt to do anyway, but using the system to help manage that better. Also, minimizing the backup from the ramp meters onto city streets, which this only applies at 320th. And, but they're concerned about that, and it also affects us adversely too. So, and then finally, provide maintenance checks every 2 months instead of every 3 months, which is our current practice. Now, those maintenance checks that they do every 2 months is not as much work as what we do already at every 3 months. So the cost impact of that is a little bit blunted, but they were adamant that they insist on that. So, and finally, we would coordinate all work activities at those intersections in quarterly meetings and as needed. So the agreement renews every year automatically until it's either one of us decides to drop it. So with that, the options considered are to approve the proposed agreement. Option 2 is do not approve the proposed agreement and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is option 1. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rick. Just a question on the maintenance. You said that they're requesting that the city do the maintenance more often. I want to make sure I got that straight.
Yes. So preventative maintenance checks are standard operating procedure, but what is covered by each agency in a preventative maintenance check may vary. And so as a result, they have theirs more frequently because they don't check quite as much stuff. So we offered the, shared checklist of saying, okay, this is what you guys require. This is what we require. And you can see it's more robust. And, ultimately, it's probably not going to be a huge swing in the cost. But they were unwilling to change that. We've talked to the King County crews who do the maintenance, and they say, yeah, we can do that. So it's not a resource issue per se. It's just we have to do something different at 5 intersections. That's about it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Committee member Martin Moore, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Bruce. I appreciate it. Rick, thank you for your work on this for, I believe this has been in the works for several years now.
Yeah.
Right. And I am, I feel like each step we're getting very, very close to what I think is going to be really good for the citizens of Federal Way. I was kind of curious in looking at one of the pages on the committee pamphlet. Let's see if I can find out what the page number it is. And it's actually the diagram of phase 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious how we came up to the decision of phase 1, 2, and 3. I'm sure there was some sort of formula and data points we were looking at, but I was just kind of curious if you could share that with us, because I'm kind of surprised that I'm not seeing 320th on there.
320th is
highway and
yeah, 320th is in phase 1.
There's phase 1. Okay.
All the way from 8th Avenue South out to Peasley Canyon Road and 321st.
Okay.
So, and to more fully answer your question, we look at a variety of parameters, but primarily it's about signal spacing. And so the closer the intersections are to each other and the higher volumes they process, makes it a higher priority for coordination. And so our primary aim on phase one was to get 320th.
Okay.
The particular way we sold that at Puget Sound Regional Council is to include all the city center.
Okay.
That's why that came out. Of course, the second busiest area is the 348th corridor.
Yeah. Yep.
And so was the genesis of phase two. And then what intersections made sense to coordinate in that system. And then phase three was our next highest priority, primarily 99 north. We also wanted to make sure to capture the 304th Military Road. Couplet there.
Rick,
So,
thank you for that. I appreciate it. I guess I'm color blind because in my mind, I was looking green and I was thinking phase one. But yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that 320th is definitely phase one, which is perfect. So is there a timeline with all this? I mean, I'm not asking for details, but just kind of generally, what are we looking at with phase one and two, at least those two phases? And then I'll just give you my final question because it's an easy question, and this is pretty incredible. And I think we have all talked about this as elected officials, and people before us have all talked about how do we get traffic moving. So I think this is really substantial work that we're doing. And so is there any plan to help kind of bring awareness of this project in a more public roles? So just want to see if that was kind of thought out, because I think this is, this is substantial work that needs to be showcased, because this is people's taxpayers that are being utilized in a really, really great way. So, yeah, thank you, Rick.
Yeah. So, we hadn't thought a lot about promotion of the project, but that's certainly something that we could do through press releases. And in particular, I would want to mention in that press release that adaptive systems, the way they function is to continually pick up data from all the signals in the system, and then in real time calculate the optimum signal timing, and then send that out to all the signal controllers to keep things as well coordinated as possible. So there's a lot of calibration associated with that operation. So I want to make sure to not oversell this. Yes, this is, one of the best systems out there, and I'm really excited about getting this done. But there will be a period of time when we're still learning it, right? Mm-hmm. And there will be certain things where it's like, okay, normally we would try X. Oh, that's not working so well, so we need to tweak it. And so that's going to be an ongoing process. So I don't want to say, yeah, once we flip the switch, everything's going to be, all wine and roses.
Right.
But as part of especially the congestion management air quality grants, we have to do before and after studies to show how we're improving air quality and reducing vehicle emissions. So that before and after is going to be an important part of this analysis. And that's a grant requirement. So we will be doing that. So even when the system is up and operating, we're still going to be operating the existing timing plans to collect that data for before, and then we'll go live with the timing. And as I said, we'll be tweaking it for a little while. And this is actually a fairly large system startup. We didn't intend it to be that large, but we just kept getting grant money. But basically, we're going to turn on the system with all 56 intersections. So it's going to start up pretty much all at once. Let's see, there was one other thing I wanted to mention about that. In terms of timeline, and again, this is still rough. And, part of the issue is actually we had a lot of back and forth with Washdot about putting this project together. It hasn't always been easy. and that has complicated how long it's taken things to get done, unfortunately. But our traffic management center is almost done. There's a few computers need to be installed and some more software, but that should be all ready to start working in it soon. And hopefully by the end of this month. And then there's still some communication issues to be worked out, and getting all the signals to talk to each other correctly. So I would say, you know, despite any potential unforeseen issues, we should have this up and running pretty well in time for the Christmas rush. So, and hopefully sooner. As I said, I'm really anxious to get this going. I know my staff is too. So, so it's coming. And then after that, you know, the other project that's somewhat associated with this is the variable lane use control. The same contractor that's doing the installation work out in the field is going to be doing that right after. And again, we're going to use the system in order to help collect the data for a before and after analysis of how well that works.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a vast jump in our capabilities in terms of signal timing.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that, and all the more reason why you know, your department and other departments are doing great work that we really should be showcasing the good things that are happening all around our community, and really the good work that our staff are doing too. So, but I'll end my comment. Thank you so much, Rick, and I'll give it back to Chair Brusso.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, David. Thank you to Councilmember Moore. I have a question from Council President Honda.
Thank you. Rick, when Sound Transit starts construction, well, heavy construction, around 3/20th, will these be impacted by that construction and the trucks coming and going?
Well, yes. But the good news is having this system in place will manage it much better than timing plans that we would come up with just to manage temporary traffic control. So
okay.
There will be some changes at 3/20th and 23rd, temporary detour route for southbound that's going to alter the signal at 23rd, having a partial temporary signal halfway between 21st and 23rd, which was not my preferred option, but it's, you know, the Sound Transit's consultant team has convinced us that this is probably the best way to go. And again, I think the adaptive system will help make that better than it would be otherwise.
Okay, so we probably won't need police officers out there directing traffic when things are bad?
There will be some occasions where police officers will be directing traffic, but we're going to try to minimize that because it's very labor intensive to, you know, you need at least 2 officers to handle these high volume intersections.
Uh-huh.
So it's a lot of resource thrown at that. So we're going to try and manage without doing that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So Rick, on that line, so what time of day is there optimal time, or is there regular working hours for this to get done, or how is this done?
The actual construction for the adaptive, or
Yes.
once it's operating? Okay.
Want the construction to get to adaptive.
Okay. Well, most of the field work has already been done. There will be signal controller swap outs because as part of the system, we're getting all new signal controllers that coordinate better with the adaptive software. So the swap outs will mostly occur on weekends, and pretty much in the evening, late at night, early morning, so as to not disrupt people as much as possible, or disrupt businesses as little as possible. So most people won't even know it's different unless you're a night owl.
Okay. That's what I was kind of wondering. Thank you. Council President Honda, you still have your hand up. You have another question?
Oh no, I forgot to take it down.
It's okay.
There it
Thought I'd
goes.
ask.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So I want to make sure we get all our questions asked. Any other questions for Rick at all? Okay. Not seeing or hearing any, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I will move to forward the proposed agreement to the April 20th, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
Here's a motion.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay. Motion by Committee Member Moore, seconded by Committee Member Tran. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing seen none, all those in favor say aye.
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 It is unanimous, 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, down to item D, progress update on sound trans activities with Ryan Midland. Ryan, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, committee chair, committee members, council president, and council members. My name is Ryan Medlin, and I'm here with the monthly update on sound transit activities. Starting with the Federal Way Link extension, there are still some clearing activities and general civil construction ramping up along 272nd. Most of it's in the city of Kent. There will be eventually a few retaining walls built on our side of 272nd to facilitate the city of Kent's negotiated improvements up there, as well as a column on the south side for the aerial guideway structure that's not scheduled at this time. Clearing for the guideway alignment along I-5 is continuing. They are currently working their way north from 317th to reach Military Road South undercrossing just south of 304th. Likely later this month. You will also may see in the near future some smaller areas of clearing at the two undercrossings of Military Road under I-5. Those are in preparation for other future aerial structures. And then the city center area, they are currently drilling shafts to support the guideway columns. They are working on that west side north of 23rd, north of 320th. With those columns, they expect to have the shafts pretty much done out to I-5 as early as the end of this month, and we should start to see the actual columns rise towards the end of this month as well. You'll likely also see some notices in the future about some traffic control. The two areas that are notable coming up is at night they're going to drive the drill rig across 23rd. When they're done drilling the shafts on the west side of 23rd, they'll drive it over to the east side of 23rd. And then closer to the end of the month, there will at some point have to be some traffic control around that 317th roundabout for some of their column works in the Washdot limited access right-of-way area. For the OMF South, I'm not going to cover many of the details that we're going to talk about at our study session tomorrow because we will talk about the DEIS review in detail tomorrow. But just as a reminder for yourselves as well as anybody from the public, the comment period for the draft environmental impact review continues through April 19th. The easiest way to submit public comments direct to Sound Transit is at the email address and website on the screen. And as far as Tacoma Dome, while we continue to work with them on provide technical assistance as requested, we don't have any updates at this time. So with that, I'll take any questions that you guys may have.
Okay. Any questions? I see Council President Honda, your hands up.
Thank you. Ryan, at the Sound Transit meeting last week, the one in the afternoon, or it started at 11 or something, only 3 people had public comment. Do you know how many people attended that meeting?
I don't have attendance numbers. I was there, but I was just a attendee like everybody from
like
the
me?
public. Yeah, exactly. So I didn't get to see the super secret list of attendees. I can certainly ask, but I don't have that number at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to know. It's I'm very concerned with how few comments have been made at these meetings.
I will find out for you.
So, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because most of the meetings I sat in too, correct me if I'm wrong, Council President Honda, but Belmore Park comes up many times sometimes, you know, and that's the only questions I kind of see too, where the concern comes from that corner that comes in there. But I was kind of wondering about that too, and I know that I also know a person that's going to have a place and just going to move in there, and she told me that those have been cleared out of there already. The corner that's coming through there. So I said, "Oh, okay," because I never get to see in there. I don't think anyone does. But she was kind of showing me where they're clearing her land and getting ready to get in there, and I asked her about that. So that's all I know about it. But it was interesting going through there too, and just kind of, like I said, in both sessions, Belmore Park came up twice. You know, more than I can think of other concerns really that came out possibly. But
yeah,
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So we've had these 2 community meetings here in Federal Way. Are they having community meetings in Kent too, or were Kent residents supposed to be attending the same ones that we attended?
Are you referring to the 2 meetings they had by Zoom?
Yes.
So those were for anybody. So those would have been for the cities of Kent or Federal Way.
So that's all of the community meetings that they're going to have.
They're doing separate briefings kind of on an as requested basis. Like I think Belmore Park, they're actually doing tonight, and might even be right now, that they're about to start. So they do some briefing meetings as requested. They did I know they attended the Planning Commission on the 17th, largely due to the request. So the 2 meetings on the 24th and 30th were formal meetings that they pre-scheduled for people to come and make public comments and advertise that way. If other community groups want a specific briefing, they can request it from Sound Transit staff.
Okay, interesting. That's even more concerning with the lack of public comment. If it was, if this was for residents of Kent too. So, all right, thank you.
I kind of agree. There wasn't that many residents from Kent on there or asked questions at all. But anyway, okay. Any other questions? Thank you for taking your hand down. Okay, I think that's it, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item E, Rental Housing Inspection Program Update. Mr. Brian Davis. Mr. Davis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Brusso, members of the committee, Council President Honda. At your last meeting, there was a question about the current status of the rental inspection program. So I'm here to give a very brief update on that. So this is, as most of you are aware, in 2019, the Council asked that we pursue an ordinance that would basically enact a rental inspection program for the city. We laid out some typical funding levels that other cities with successful programs had done. And we did not get that at the time, so we pursued anyway with just in-house resources that we had at the time. We put together a team of between planning, community services, and code enforcement, and we made some progress on an ordinance, and it's I'd say it's about 67%, or about 2/3 the way there to get it across the finish line. There was a moment, well, there's been several moments. There's been quite a bit of turnover since we made progress on the ordinance. We had 5 planners and a code compliance officer and a community services coordinator. We've had those positions turn over either for better pay or for retirement purposes. We're just now, I appreciate the opportunity to come to you today because we are just now, with the hiring of a new planning manager, we're at where we need to be. In fact, we just hired a co-compliance officer as well, made an offer today. So we should be back to full capacity here within, I'd say about 2 or 3 weeks when we get the co-compliance officer on board. I believe that if there's no more turnover for the next couple months, I think we should be okay to resume this. If that's not the case, then a possible backup plan is that we do have budgeted $100,000 in startup costs for the program. This is something that the council approved. If we get into a similar situation where we're just simply short-staffed, we potentially could use a portion of that funding, and this would all be contingent on future approval. I'm just throwing this out there at this time, but we could potentially use a portion of those funds to carry it across the finish line, so to speak, so that we can get the ordinance ready to go. If we did that option, then what we would need to do before we actually adopt the ordinance is secure funding or allocate funding for the startup costs that we would otherwise have saved for the project to move forward, because we can't adopt an ordinance without the staffing in place to basically carry out the program or to enforce the program. So that's where we're at right now. Again, I think within the next couple of weeks, we should be back to full capacity that we could resume this, and be more than happy to even give an update to the full council a couple of months after that to tell you that we're, where we're at and how close we are, and some of the options that we've looked at, because there's different ways this program can be carried out. But that's where we are right now, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? I know that Council President Honda. Oh, and then Council President Honda, and then we'll go to Team Member Moore. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. So, as Council President, is someone who works with our, with the budget. I mean, we all work with the budget, but I'm concerned every time a director says to me that we need to find some money for something that the council wants, something that an initiative that we want to get moving forward. And, in 2022, as a council, we're going to have to find some money for several positions that we funded for 2021. And I would be really concerned if we would need to find money for this also. I just don't know that we would be able to do it. So I'm hoping that the staff that you're hiring could get this done without having to dip into that $100,000, because I don't know that we can come up with an additional $100,000 as a council to do this. So I'll be cheering you on. Hope it works.
That. Yes, and I agree with you. I don't. I'm not asking for money today, and I don't plan to do so. But we're trying to carry out your desire for this program. The program to carry this out costs more than what it's typically costs more than what we were given. So we're doing our best to get it done, even though we don't have as much as most programs do. So I'm fully intending to get this delivered to you under budget, which is in our case on budget, and hopefully have a program that serves our residents well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Brian. Can we remember one more? You have a question? I know you do.
Brian, thank you so much for the update, and Chair Baruza, thank you. I really appreciate this this update quite a bit, and this issue is near and dear to my heart, because it really just affects our immigrant populations, people of low income populations, and it's good to see that we're we're moving the needle forward. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of get clarification is, your presentation went awfully fast, which is good, but I couldn't write as fast enough there, Brian. But you said 67%. Tell me what the 67% is. I just want to get that, so I make sure I'm clear-headed on that.
So it's just my rough estimate of how complete the project is.
Okay. And then I didn't hear you saying you seem to be somewhat confident, or in terms of an ordinance coming in. I didn't catch that give or take timeline that you were thinking.
Yeah, I'm hopeful if there's no turnover. And again, part of the turnover is that, you know, we've sat through meetings where, you know, our pay is not as comparable to other cities. So that's part of the turnover is that. So I'm hopeful that we can keep the staff in place to complete this project. We are getting a new compliance officer here, and I apologize. Most of the content that I did present, Councilmember Moore, is in my memo, but the part that I mentioned about the code compliance officer is not in there. So I apologize for that because I just found about it today. So yeah, the person should be on within the next couple of weeks, and that could allow us to form the team back together, be an entirely new team, but the same divisions represented to carry out the program once we get the personnel in place. So I'm hopeful that we can then resume the project and then finish that remaining third of the project, or 33%, I guess it would be if I'm using the same math.
So are you? And again, I certainly don't need specifics because I understand you're kind of juggling some things and whatnot. But are you hopeful that you could see such an ordinance in a couple of months, or in about 5 years? Or I'm teasing when I say that, but what's your thought on the ordinance aspect?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to form the team because it's going to be entirely new players that have not been on the project before. So there is going to be a bit of a learning curve just for them to be updated with the issue and what the work has been done so far. So I'd hesitant to say just in a couple of months, but certainly not 5 years.
No, sure.
I think Councilmember Moore, I think we'd have a goal to get it in place before the end of the year. That would be my goal, is to get something on the books so that we're not that we would know by then if there is budgetary impacts of what we're doing. Hopefully there's not, but just so that we would have that question answered by the time we get time to if we need to amend the budget or anything like that.
Okay. That sounds good, Brian. Thank you so much. And I'll stay in touch with you outside of committee meetings. And Chair Bruce, if I can just request that maybe in 2 months we get another soft update, I think would be kind of good. Brian, I appreciate you staying on top of this issue. I think things can easily just slip through the cracks. And I just appreciate you as the director of your department trying to keep that needle moving forward. So I appreciate that, and I just would like to request for another update, maybe in 2 months, which I hope would be fair. So
happy to do so whenever you want.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So noted. Committee Member Tran, you had your hand up, did you? I just want to make sure you get your question answered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question were very similar to that of Councilmember Moore, so I don't need to repeat the questions. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions, Ryan? Okay. All right, Brian, because you have our next one, our item F is vacation rental regulations briefing. So
yes, so
it's yours.
Another item where we need to get something done and there's no money to do it. So we will work through this one as well. So we had a complaint submitted to the mayor's office. In fact, we get fairly regular complaints about this issue where there's a neighbor in a single family residential neighborhood that has a lot of cars, a lot of people, and then the next day, poof, it's gone. Nobody's there. And then the next weekend, the same thing happens. And so there's pretty good indication that that's a vacation rental going on. And so there was a question raised to the mayor's office, and the mayor asked me to contact Chair Baruso to put this on the committee's agenda just to have a discussion so that we can maybe get some feedback on what direction we should take with this. And that is that this particular resident says, well, we should be going after these in some way. We don't know what that looks like. We have a pretty good indication of what other cities have done that have a vacation rental, I guess a stronger enforcement program, what that looks like. What ours currently looks like is that in 2007, there was a director's interpretation made that vacation rentals are essentially single family homes. And if they wanted to carry it out as a commercial business, then they did have to register that business. And so that we currently have that in place right now. The enforcement is very difficult. It's very difficult to gather evidence to identify which house might be conducting a vacation rental type situation if we don't have record of it. So we could get a complaint from a resident saying there's lots of cars, lots of people, which typically happens on the weekends or nights when it's only the police that are available to deal with it. So the enforcement is difficult. So if we were to pursue something stronger, whether it be an ordinance that bolsters the idea of a vacation rental program within the city, or if we keep what we have in place currently, and we just need better enforcement of it, those are questions that we need to have answered. That we haven't done the research to really give you answers to at this point. I think something that would help at this point from the committee is kind of your feeling on this issue. That we do have something in place, which if to deal with the concerns, we would just need better enforcement, or if we want to pursue something, a stronger program, which is another option, but that still is something that would require some level of enforcement that is currently not in place. So that's where we are at with this issue. I'm happy to hear any feedback or thoughts that the committee has, or any questions that I can answer on this topic.
Thank you, Brian. One question that I think I had unanswered, but HOAs. So how much work are we doing with HOAs, or are the HOAs the ones that have come to us? I take it, some of them, or I know one of the bigger ones, correct?
We get a mixture of both the individual residents contacting us, or we'll get HOAs, like the leadership of an HOA calling the office, and we. I believe the mayor's staff does interact with HOAs more closely. My staff have had some limited interaction with some of the HOAs. Most of the complaints that my office get are from individual residents in the neighborhood. But we do, to your question, we do work with HOAs, whether it be my office or the mayor's office.
Right. Okay. Because that's kind of wondering too, because I know that some HOAs, are larger than others, right? And those calls will come from the larger ones a lot of times, and then it's mainly homes that are older homes that have been either renovated or sold, and some folks are moved out, or time to do an Airbnb instead of renting it out. I get that. So, okay. Thank you. I have a question from committee member Martin Moore. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Baruso. So, this is actually kind of in my backyard, which is kind of interesting. And I drive there every so often. To be honest, I haven't driven there lately. But when I do, I definitely see a huge amount of vehicles lined up. And I certainly hear a lot of concerns. Has been brought up to the mayor's office, and I'm sure some of us on the council. And so my interest as a committee member is to work towards an ordinance factor and look at, quite frankly, increased enforcement. I mean, I don't think, speaking for myself, I don't see it as an either or factor. I see it as an and factor, and this has been an issue that the HOAs had to deal with for a few years. I'll put it that way. I know that some of our constituents, my neighbors, have been absolutely frustrated with this. And I think it's also more than just noise and, I can't think of the other word I want to use, but I think it's also has a lot to do with the work that he's doing on our streets. Certainly I don't want to single somebody out with a specific issue, but it is a concern, and I think my mind tends to go towards an ordinance and looking at doing increased enforcements. So thank you.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. So, Brian, this has come up before in FEDRAC, for the several years, how we could get these Airbnbs or vacation rentals to get business licenses in the city so that we know where they're at, because we've had complaints from pretty much all over the city, not just in one neighborhood. And we've been told how difficult that's going to be. So if we did have an ordinance saying that a vacation rental had to have a business license to rent out their facility, how would we enforce it? You know, I don't want to have an ordinance on board and not enforce it or selectively enforce it if the neighbors complain. I mean, it needs to be enforced citywide. So how have other cities enforced their ordinances?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is we talk about doing both an ordinance and an enforcement. That's added what we're doing right now, and so that's a resource question. So to your question of what do other cities do, they will identify a need or a goal or put it into their work plan for the year that then coincides with the budget that they have put together, and then they're able to work through it that way. I think what we have right now is that we've kind of had this issue floating out there for a while, but now we're talking about it at a committee level and also in the other committee, as you pointed out. So again, the answer to your question, and it's one that I would recommend as well. I mean, I haven't talked to the mayor about this, but if there is a desire to pursue this, I would work that into some sort of work plan or budget that can be considered as part of many other things that are desired or prioritized with other things that the council wants, and we'd be happy to carry that out. At this point, I don't have the I don't think the chief has the staffing to add police officers because that's essentially what it would be. It would be after hours and on weekends where this would be enforced. So we would have to look at increasing some levels of police activity to enforce this, as well as going through the ordinance. I don't think this ordinance would be as difficult as the previous agenda item we talked about. So as far as the work goes, it's not, hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together, but it still is, it'd be a little of time to work something through. The enforcement, though, I think would be the bigger discussion.
Sure.
Okay. I know it has just in the past sounded like it would be really difficult, to identify where these are.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's been some work done by, I believe, our city attorney's office.
Go ahead.
And the Economic Development Office, and they concluded that the registration would not really support the enforcement of the program, so we would have to come up with some additional resources to enforce it. It wouldn't be a self-funding program. Again, like the last one is, once it gets up and running, it would be self-funding, whereas this one would not reach that level. So there would be some dedication of additional resources for this particular one to be carried out on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
So Brandon, how is it enforced? If it would be enforced today, how is it done?
So that we would need to make contact with the owner and provide them with evidence of an incident where there was what was perceived to be some sort of vacation activity where there's lots of cars, lots of people, lots of noise, and then indicate to them that they have a vacation rental going on, and somehow provide that to them, and then compel them to come in and register that as a business. Once they do that, and they observe every other residential, regular residential rule like noise hours and parking is not really something that we regulate on streets, but really the noise level is down, then they're considered a residence at that point. So there is no enforcement if there's a bunch of people in a house, as long as they're being quiet. So enforcement of we just haven't had that much teeth on the books, I guess. But once the teeth are there, then that's, it takes a while to build a case that this is actually a vacation rental that we're dealing with.
Right. So on that aspect, real quick, so the enforcement goes to the folks that are in the house, or it goes to the owner?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time, please?
Would that enforcement go to the folks who are in the house at the time renting, or you're going back to the owner?
Yeah. So we would, it would probably, it depends on how bad the noise is. If it's really bad noise, it would probably be immediate to the people in the house, which would be carried out by, typically, again, the after hours would be police. The regular hours, the code enforcement staff would contact the owner to deal with that and to get it all straightened out so that the incidents like that don't happen again.
Okay. Thank you. And I see, Bill Medino, your hand is up. You're on here.
To answer your, can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, sorry, I'm on the, I'm on one of the start meetings at the same time about the federal issue. So, what was happening as the mayor's office communicates with HOAs is January, February, right before COVID, the Twin Lakes HOA had done some research, and then Doc and I on Brian's staff put together what you see on page 2 as something for discussion. And so the mayor very much would like some sort of discussion, be it a study session, and there's all sorts of options. We just got a note from one of our HOA people. Seattle apparently actually charges for what's going on, which helps defray the cost. But it might be time to go through a full discussion of all the options, but then we also have to be very, very cognizant of what this does to our police and our community development folks as well too. But there's been lots of communication, and it's about to sort of resurge again now that COVID is hopefully ending.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. So, Bill and Brian, are you looking for a study session go forward? The next council meeting, or in May's meeting? Sometime in May, or you want to get this time done sooner?
You're talking about a study session, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Sure.
Chair Brusso.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for sharing the facts and what you've been doing and experiencing as well. Are we looking for a committee study session, or are we looking at a full council? That's my first question. I mean, regardless, my opinion is we need to keep moving forward on this, because this has been an issue. And I think if I understood Brian correct, and that's, we need teeth on the books to be able to point to something. And if something's not on there, then we're going to just keep seeing the same thing over and over and over without any sort of ordinance on the books. But I think going back, what are we trying? Is this a full council study session or a committee study session?
That's going to be my next question.
We're recommending a full council, but then what's good about that is that also means the full gamut of what we need to do resource-wise for community development, and the police will be present in front of all council members, as well as the need from the neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully supportive of that. I'm sure we'll get that on the council agenda at some point, and the agenda setting team will work to get it on there with Stephanie. So, I mean, I'm definitely supportive of that.
I can tell you that our special meetings are full up until June 1st, so it would have to be sometime after that. And I'm sure that Stephanie and probably has some special meetings already booked in, after that too. But I do know that we're booked out until at least June 1st on special meetings.
And that was my question too. I didn't know where a placement on the calendar that would be. And so that was kind of the biggest thing I was kind of wondering about.
We can take it to agenda setting and see and check with Stephanie. that would mean that staff would, have to be ready at some point to present to the council.
Yep. I wouldn't mind supporting that, Council President Honda. I know it needs a little, some support to get onto the agenda. So I'll support that effort.
Brandon and Bill, do you guys have enough time at all? Kind of loaded question.
I'm going to start working for Brian on weekends in order to do this.
I just want to make sure
Not that I'm qualified at all.
I just want to make sure there's enough there for you guys.
Yeah, to get something for a work session that's easily done. So we can do it anytime.
And
Okay.
and it's actually a very simple issue. We put the costs to it and the enforcement, and so it might be able to fit between study sessions as well. But the facts are the facts. It's there's resources that need to be done to do it, but then there's also a challenge. So.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get it on the schedule.
Okay, and then one last question, Joe Russo, for
Go
Bill.
ahead.
Bill, I assume you're going to keep the group in tight communication with what's coming out of the committee meeting today.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that right?
Yes,
Okay.
but I'm gonna, it's going to be very realistic, saying, well, it's going to agenda setting. I think we're tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday, Council President Honda.
I think it's tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon. So I'll just let them know that we're trying to figure out a way to get a study session on the agenda.
Agenda settings tomorrow afternoon.
That's right, it got moved. So no, they're watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Did you had one more thing you wanted to say, or? Okay. It's not. I got the from him, so I was wondering.
All right. I heard that too.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. So that's good. Hopefully tomorrow's agenda setting, we get that somehow worked out for you. So, okay. Any other questions for Brian? I think we're pretty good on that one. If not, I'm going to move to item G for downtown planning project options. That's Mr. James Rogers. James, you're on here. You have the floor.
Thank you, council and committee members. My name is James Rogers, a recent hire in the planning department as a senior planner, and I appreciate your time this evening. I'd like to share with you just a brief presentation, if I can. Let's see. There we go. So tonight we are seeking some direction from you on our one of our tasks on the work program. That task is the Downtown Comprehensive Plan Update. It's projected to be a 2-year project and is currently funded for 1 year, $100,000. And so we are seeking some context on that. There's supposed to be a consultant retained for that project. And we're looking for a scope. What are the concerns to be addressed in this plan? What's the planning area? What's the timeline? Those kind of questions. And we know this is a bit of an open-ended question, but as part of putting together a scope and advertising for a consultant for this project, staff needs your input. Knowing ahead of time about concerns related to any areas of downtown or future land uses, such as housing or retail, would be helpful for focusing the consultant and staff efforts to help us make the best use of time and resources. Another item on our work program is to look at making some code amendments, including a review of height and bulk regulations, multifamily requirements, parking, design standards, view corridors in the city center area. Regulations related to transit-oriented development will also be prepared and for consideration by council. We only bring this task up because the downtown plan will likely help guide this effort as well. So it's important that we understand your needs for this downtown planning effort. So maybe if we start the discussion here, it will help us determine the geographic planning area and other factors that will help shape the scope of our work. And depending on where this discussion takes us and the geographic area in question, we may have a couple of process options we could look at later in this presentation. But the most important thing is that we get a good idea of the scope of work and that we understand your expectations for this project. So with that, we would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, James. I think one of the, this comes up as quite, and it's come out in the past, but for the, I don't know that we really don't have an answer about this, but Sound Transit and the area that's being used right now, that kind of thing has come up time and time again. On housing, whether it's housing, whether it's retail on the bottom, housing on top. I think that's one of the things that has come into discussion, has been out there about, again, on versus, low income versus moderate versus that type. Where does that go in the city? How does that affect the downtown core? I believe that I just kind of started out with that because I know that's been out there. We've been talking about this for quite a while. Thank you for coming to us and asking for it, because there is a lot out there to talk about. So I will start with Council President Honda. She has her hand up.
Thank you. So welcome to the city, James. I haven't met you yet. So when you're talking about the code amendments, are you working on that now, or is
that's something we're going to be starting on within the next month or two? We're going to begin that project. It may take us a year or so to get through that, but that's certainly pretty high on the agenda.
So no matter what the staffing looks like in the department, you're going to go ahead and start working on that within the month. Is that correct?
That's right. That's one of my projects, along with this downtown plan. So if we coordinate some of that, great. That's why we're asking about this downtown plan, is because we want to know what your concerns are and whether those things need to happen in context of like a sub-area plan, or if it may be just, some code amendments would take care of things. We're not sure yet. So that's why we're asking.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad to hear that the code amendments will be worked on before June. So I'm interested in hearing what the rest of council says. And I'm thinking that maybe this might be something that people need to maybe think about for, a week or so. So that maybe even a couple of weeks, just so that they can actually wrap their heads around it and really think about what it is. I know this is really important. This is something I've been wanting to get done for years, and I'm very excited that we're starting it now. But I also want to make sure that it's done the way that the vision of what council wants, that every council member is able to let us know what that is. And I'm thinking that this meeting is probably a good introduction to that, and maybe we could ask for council members to really think about this and perhaps send you an email, or it might be too late to come back to the May meeting. I don't know. Would it be too late to come back to the May meeting and talk about this?
Council President, the main meeting, which main meeting?
The May LUTC meeting.
Right. I think if folks take the time to other council members think about this really clearly, like you said, maybe write some emails out and then kind of see how it goes, James, and what the input is. Maybe things you can address that way.
I think
we should be pretty good for May. At least get that out there.
Okay. Yeah, if that's the route we want to go, I can certainly do that, and I'm happy to bring this back to you next month.
Yeah, because I agree. It's just kind of like I've seen all the bullet points and other things to want to talk about and think about. There's a lot there. So let's take the time to do this right.
There is. Yeah, we were just hoping to get some sort of an idea of what the big picture thought was on this project.
Okay. Before I move on to Councilmember Kochmar, Bill, if you can hear me, you still have your hand up. Just want to make sure you didn't have anything else even on this subject. But if you take that down, that'd be great. If not, then Councilmember Kochmar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Baruso. You already have the majority of our concerns are just housing, traffic, and type of development. But part of the issue is that, for example, Sound Transit has 3 parcels that they're going to be selling under our current comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, of course, is like a plan for development. And so I don't want our entire downtown, personally, on my behalf, to be all low-income housing. When we say affordable housing, generally that's a euphemism for me to be low-income housing, which is fine. We need that we're working on a housing action plan. But we also need to have a mix of housing. And so we want to mix the low-income housing in with higher end, for example, condos. We have no condos in our downtown. I would like to see that, condos, for our first-time homebuyers. Our first-time homebuyers are getting priced out of the market in a better way. And the way our real estate folks tell us that they can get into the market is through purchase of a condominium. Secondly, I don't want to see just talking about housing and traffic. I would like to have us talk, maybe in your sub-area plan idea, but I want a plan for the downtown. For example, where would we have kiosks? Where would we have sitting areas with little floral plant arrangements? So we'd have a pedestrian walking areas in our downtown. Where would we have possibly in the future a pedestrian overpass to go from the light rail over to hopefully some kind of shopping where the our mall currently is. So, and then another thing, we have senior housing. We have a plethora of senior housing for low income. We don't have senior housing for people who are higher income. And so I think that would go under the condos. So I would like to see a plan, an actual plan for our downtown. So if you're going to build a building, you're also going to build an area for pedestrian walkways, pathways, little park areas, or maybe I don't want to just see cement and high rise. I want to see a plan that looks pleasing, and perhaps including small business, retail at the base of a development for light rail. That's what they've always talked about, but in my estimation, and of course I'm not an expert, it doesn't work. So you can look at Auburn for that one. I just think that we need to have a good plan for our downtown. That's what I'm hoping when we hired the new zoning person that was going to be hired on July 1st. That's what I was hoping they would do. That's my input. Thank you.
Okay. So is it the expectation that this would be an update of the current city center plan, or did you have a larger area in mind?
No, it's the current city center the way it is.
Okay.
I'm mostly just concerned with the 3 parcels that are going to be developed or being sold under our current comprehensive plan to new developers. And I just want to make sure that we don't end up with something like the building that was built across from Safeway. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sefa Dawson.
Thank you so much, Chair Russo. I do understand and see what Councilmember Kochmar is saying, and I think in order to accomplish that, I would hope that we have some kind of not a study session, not a committee meeting, but go through our zoning codes at some kind of a retreat type of a setting for a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, just dedicated to do this work and address all the questions and all what Councilmember Kochmar said. So these on this, your thoughts, concerns to be addressed, planning area, scope of work, and timeline. I think we can use that as a guideline to look at our whole zoning for the city, because sometimes we're reactionary because zoning allows certain things, and then we respond to it afterwards with moratoriums. But I think if we have a full grasp of what our zoning looks like and what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how we move forward, I think that'd be a great way to move forward citywide, and especially in particular, maybe prioritize what areas to focus on first. But I would like to see some kind of a work meeting where we do spend time just on this.
Okay.
Thank you. Council President Honda, you have your hand up still. Did you have another question?
Yes, I do. So, Councilmember Sefadossin, do you want a retreat type meeting before the consultant starts to work, or after the consultant's worked and is presenting the information to us? And I have two other questions after I get an answer to that one.
We could probably do it with a consultant.
So before?
Or during. I mean, I don't.
During, okay.
Because I think then we can actually guide that. They can guide the conversation, and we can have our input, if that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, to James, how long will, so when we go out to hire this consultant, and how long will it take to get a proposal together, to get it out, to hire the consultant, and to get the consultant working? Is that, if we come back in May, is that going to be enough time to get this person going before, around July?
I would have to look into that. My concern at this point is that we don't yet have a scope of work to hire a consultant for. And
Correct.
So until we know what we want, it's going to be difficult to select someone to do that job.
Then
Correct.
maybe, I'm sorry, Council President, I was saying maybe then would it be helpful if we have this prior to hiring the consultant and work with you, James, on this?
I think that might be a good idea. It sounds
Okay.
like if I were to send this out to all of the committee and council to get back some input and maybe summarize that, come back to you in a month with that summary, and then have this discussion a little bit further, and maybe we can dial in on that scope a little bit better. Does that sound?
Yeah, I'll support that. I will definitely support that. Yes.
Okay.
That looks good.
So then we would get the scope of work by the LUTC May meeting, and then get the proposal written, advertised, hired, and the work started by July 1st.
So, Council, if I could jump in here, and I apologize, I'm in the office with my computer timed out. So we're talking about reconvening as a committee or a full council before the next LUTC meeting.
I think you were talking about getting input and then coming back at the LUTC meeting in May.
That's my understanding.
So individual council members would write to let James know what they would like to see in the proposal.
And then at that May meeting, let's just for discussion purposes say that there's division and there's not agreement of what that scope looks like. Help me out here. So what 'cause I like the idea, the recommendation of sort of helping scope this first. And I like the idea of having a discussion before we get the consultant on board, because I don't want to bring the consultant on board and have them drive the sort of the scoping process, because I think that's something the staff can do. You don't need to pay someone else to do that. what they can help with is through, carrying out the visioning and the whatever the scope looks like at that point. So, so we're talking about individually council members coming back to staff with what they look like, and then we'll have a discussion at the May LUTC meeting, and then just see where it goes from there. To council president's comment, if we can get the scope lined up at the May meeting, is there enough time then to have them on board by July? It's pretty close. So we need to put the RFP together, which typically takes a little bit of time. And then we advertise, and then there's a response time after that. So July is cutting it pretty close, but we could certainly work towards that as a goal to have them on board so we can carry this out. But that is pretty close.
So I have another question then, Brian, and this is actually for all of the council members here. Sometimes we have where two council members meet with a staff person and talk about what's going on, something that's happening. Would it be helpful to have small meetings with the staff person, maybe Brian or James, to discuss this before the May meeting, before the May LUTC meeting, or is that just too much?
I think we could work with whatever I'm speaking on behalf of staff. I think we could work with whatever you'd like to do. The small groups work, or just getting your feedback individually. Just for a larger discussion at the meeting would work for staff. And I apologize for interrupting committee members from commenting after that.
So both ways.
So both ways?
That what we were talking about? Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
For staff, either one's fine.
Okay.
So what are council members comfortable with?
Yeah, Chair Brusso.
That's what I'd like to see is, I'd like the smaller meetings. I'd give some time for some thought for that, so that's out there. But I can go, if you only have time to write an email, then I would give it a deadline to get that done. But also, again, I think the small meetings would be great because we've done those and they work out really great.
So we could offer small meetings to those who want them. And then if not everyone is able to do that and they would rather send an email, we could, allow that too. Would that work?
I think that would work.
Chair.
Just Martin, is that you? Go ahead.
That's me. I tend to be a fan of the small meetings, small group meetings, and then compound that information and present it to the whole, committee or council. But that's where my mind kind of tends to go to. I tend to like the smaller meetings, small group meetings. Thank you.
Okay. Before you go, Councilmember Coach Moore, you had your hand up. So I just want to make sure you're.
Thank you very much. I do have my hand up again. Trevor, so my concern would be, are we going to discuss also, I'd just like to have some discussion on whether we should include the downtown core and frame as well. Now, I'm open to discussion on that. It's just, I'm wondering if we should. And then secondly, I'm wondering if we will have the ability to have the consultant arrange for either some kiosks or something on Zoom or something on the city website so that people can weigh in, some kind of a survey, so people can weigh in once we've decided what we'd like to do, so that they can weigh in what their downtown should look like. This is their downtown, so I think we should take into account what people think. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian, do you have any thoughts, or James, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's something that we could do once we get the project rolling. I don't know if we need people commenting on the logistics of the scoping, but to Councilmember Kochmar's, what does the downtown look like? That's something that we could capture mid or early in the project. Excuse me.
Okay.
Sure. Well, yeah, we could certainly do a visioning exercise to get public comment on that as part of the work. But,
okay.
So Chair Brusso, I will have Jerry Lynn send an email out about the small meetings, and I guess I need to know what staff member we would be working with so that she could coordinate with that staff member.
I believe that would be me.
Okay.
You, James?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Committee member
I
Tran,
think-
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think we have a plan moving forward. So.
Okay. I know that. Committee member Tran, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Baruso, and James. Welcome to the
Thank you.
city. My comments is in regards to how to provide the input to James. I prefer to have a smaller meeting, and also allow council members to email James because some of the council members may not have time to meet in person or via Zoom. So if we have that option to all of us, then I think we will receive a lot of participation from members of the council. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Seffa Dawson, you have your hand up. You have another question? Oh, you're saying no. Okay. Bill, if you can hear me, you still have your hand up. He's listening to me. Okay.
I think he's on another meeting too. He said.
I think he is. He is, but I'm going to get him. I'm going to have him owe me $1. So Brian and James, do you have enough to go on?
Yes, and I want to thank the chair and the committee for this discussion. I know that this has been brought up several times at the council level in meetings, and so I appreciate this opportunity to get your thoughts around what you're hoping this project looks like. Because the last thing we want to do is bring someone on board, spend a bunch of money on a product that you don't like. So we appreciate this discussion. I think it's going to get us on the right path to get us a good again something that is going to be good for the council and for the residents of Federal Way. So thank you.
Yes, and
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it, and I look forward to our conversations going forward.
Thank you, James. And
Thank you.
yes, welcome. Alrighty. We're going to move on to any other questions before I move on. So to make sure I'm seeing any. Okay. Our last item H, discussion on community workforce agreements. EJ, you have the floor.
Good evening, Chair Baruso, Council President, and members of Council. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And hopefully you can see that. Okay. So tonight, I am before you tonight on an information-only item, following up on a couple of conversations between some of the committee members and council members and the mayor's office, and specifically about community workforce agreements. So, like I said, this is not here for action tonight, just for information and any discussion that the council wants to engage in. So as a little bit of background, to kind of set the stage, what a community workforce agreement is in fundamentals is it's a comprehensive pre-hire collective bargaining agreement. It's typically between a government agency. That agency could be anything from a city to a county to a transit agency to a state agency like Ecology or Washdot, and labor unions. And that can either be in general with labor unions, so that it's not a specific union, or it can be pre-selected unions. And that may be plural, but it would limit any interactions between the agencies that enter it. What a CWA does, is it establishes basic terms and conditions of employment, typically for capital projects by the sponsoring agency. So those typically include priority hire requirements, minimum percentages associated with those priority hires, reporting requirements. It can also include training and other either groups or requirements that the two parties agree on. So that at a high level is what a community workforce agreement entails.
So some background information specific to this conversation is Public Works was asked to collect information about the pros and cons of creating and subsequently entering a community workforce agreement, which is what we're here tonight to do. So then with that direction, we reached out to other cities within King County of approximately our same size. We found out that there were no other cities our size that had a CWA. So we in turn then reached out to King County itself, as well as some other larger government agencies. And during that, we reached out to enough different cities that we did receive contacts from multiple trade groups and labor groups, some of which you heard from tonight during public comment. So before I get into the pros and cons, I want to start with a caveat that depending on the group that's viewing this list and depending on who specifically is reviewing this, some of these pros may very well be reviewed as cons and vice versa. Some of these cons by certain groups of users may be viewed as pros. So what I tried to do is to sort these into 3 separate groups. One is for the city, one for the community, and then one for the contractors. So the contractors, which I didn't touch on, but they're the people that ultimately contract with the city to perform capital work that are essentially enjoined to a CWA that the city has entered, and are the ones that are ultimately responsible for carrying out that work, even though they're not initially a party to it. So like I said, some of these things may be viewed as a con by certain groups, even though they're listed as pros for the main groups. And I think that'll make more sense as we go through this. So for the city, the largest pro to this is that they typically contain a no strike or lockout clause for projects. And it specifically is to the unions that are enjoined to the agreement. So it does not guarantee that there will not be a strike on a project. It guarantees that the groups that are party to the CWA will not strike on a certain project. For the community, it creates opportunities for preferred entry workers. It does establish apprenticeship and diversity goals, typically for the program. It increases the opportunities for workers in a participating union to get training. For the contractor, so this is the contractor that has been awarded the bid from the city and is responsible for actually building a project. It provides predictable labor costs because that's something that effectively the city's negotiated for capital programs. This is one of those super sensitive, if you ask 5 different contractors, you're going to get 6 different answers. It may make large projects easier to manage as all unions are placed under one contract. And the giant caveat to that is typically a CWA supersedes any contract or union contract that's already in place. That comes into play with larger construction firms that, especially at a national level, that have gone out and they have enough work with certain unions that they negotiate what effectively is a CWA or a priority hire program with a specific union. So that gets superseded by this, and the terms may be different than the one that they negotiated, but they would be obligated to follow the cities. So one of the things that is common is that within our contract between a general contractor, the CWA either requires or provides for the city to pay provisions or bonuses for the contractor exceeding recruitment or training goals that are established by the CWA. The cons, and this is just, like I said, a very highlight list. This is not inclusive. For the city, it does reduce competition in bidding. A CWA effectively precludes open shop contractors from bidding. It does create an administrative responsibility to the city. That equates to staffing, and it does increase to a cost in projects. The amount of cost is very debatable depending on who you talk to. Some of the research that we did show that cost is low in the 5 to 10%. Other sample projects that we found, it was attributed to 30+% increases in costs. What there is no disagreement on is that the cost goes up. So for the community, and we'll cover these numbers a little bit more in detail later, it does require increased revenues. It requires increased revenues from solid waste. So that is what funds a portion of the overlay program. And that is one that, there is an option there to reduce the overlay program and maintain the same funding level. It does not, the other ones though are much less negotiable. It will require a fee increase to the surface water utility. And then the streets and parks capital programs, both will need additional funding. And then for the general fund, again, you're back to, it does have additional staffing, and there's other programmatic costs that have to be funded for this to work. For the contractor, as I mentioned, typically a CWA supersedes any labor agreement that an individual contractor has. That, even for our larger projects in the city, does come into play where contractors have worked with unions for union shops. They've worked with a certain union for a long period of time. Many of the contractors that reached out to us view this as a very large negative. It does inhibit the use of non-union training programs. That is another big sticking point of what training is acceptable and what is not. And that's something that would have to get worked out. And, right out of the gate, it, by definition, is inherently unfair to non-union contractors by precluding them from proceeding city's work. So, as background for the council's information, we did pull all of the CWAs in King County, and that's the list you see in front of you. So it's King County, the City of Seattle, Seattle Public School District, Sound Transit, and Washdot's an interesting one. So Washdot had one. It actually lapsed, and Washdot, for a period of time, said that they were not going to use these anymore. Now, recently, so the 520 floating bridge has a project-specific, and it's not called a community workforce agreement. It's actually called something slightly different, but it is a project-specific agreement that Washdot went out and negotiated. And basically, they're using it as a pilot project to debate whether or not they should re-enter this water. So, in full transparency, I want to share that with council that it is, 520 floating bridge is certainly within King County, and it is active, but it doesn't represent a true CWA in the definition sense of it. So one of the big things within a community workforce agreement is establishing a priority hire and preferred worker classification. So that's something that you heard about in a couple of the public comments tonight. So by the federal law, those are established by zip codes. So one of the things that I do want to share with council is that Federal Way is currently included within all of the active CWAs that were on the page before you. So Federal Way has 2 zip codes, primarily, and you can see both of them are here and on the list, and this is the King County exhibit, but you can see Federal Way is fully covered by those. So this would be an overlay on a zone that is already covered in other CWAs. So the preliminary CWA financial implications, and like I said, there's a lot of variables to this. So a lot of this is very, very preliminary, and if this moves forward, as it works its way through the process, these numbers would get refined. But some of the key highlights to it would be, it does require 2 additional FTEs to be able to administer this. I did see an email to council suggesting that these should be put into the purchasing department. We don't have one of those. Every department handles its own purchasing. So these would fall into either the mayor's office or the law department, looking at on the national scale where the staffing occurs for agencies. So it does require funding of a budget for third-party monitoring, enforcement, software, and other soft costs. Those two numbers for prorating what the larger agencies are paying to a city of our size, those first two bullets equates to approximately $1 million a year of ongoing cost to run this. To the programmatic side, so for the surface water utility fee, we have projects that we're required to do. We have the capital improvement plan that we're required to pursue. With the surface water utility, which is a little bit different than some of the other programs and funds that we are responsible for administering, there's some what are called compounded programmatic costs. It's a mouthful. But essentially what that means is our public education, for example, is a percentage of the overall surface water utility fee amount. So, and there's a couple things like that, but public education tends to be the one I always use as an example because it's a good example to me, or in my opinion, because it has absolutely nothing to do with capital costs. It has, our public education is critically important. It's something we absolutely need to be doing. But there's a very little correlation between going out and building a stormwater conveyance system and public education. But that being said, the total programmatic cost for surface water is required to be funded. And then, based on that value, the minimum amount that has to be spent on education of the public related to surface water is a percentage. There's a couple other things like that. So when you add all of those components together, we would be looking at, and this is fairly conservative, it may end up being higher than that, 25% increase to the surface water utility fee to administer this. Solid waste excise fee, we would be looking at increasing that 10 to 15% to maintain the same level of service we have today. We would also, and these are a little bit harder to quantify, and frankly, we're probably going to have to bring in someone like FCS or one of the accounting firms that we work with. And I use FCS as an example is because they're already doing work for the city and they just finished the surface water utility fee analysis for us a year ago. But we would have to bring them or someone similar to them in a professional capacity to look at the capital programs for both parks and public works. So we have 6-year plans in both both departments. The current REIT and MVET will not meet our obligations to fulfill those projects and fulfill the grant funding requirements we've already had. So those programs will need to be subsidized from another unrestricted source. And what that is can be certainly discussed. I don't have an answer to that other than funding will be needed there. So from all this, you can see typically a CWA is a large agency tool. It's for large projects. And the slide you see in front of you, this is why. This has a really high cost to the city and to the taxpayers to administer. So that is typically why you only see these in large agencies. So as far as workload goes, this is, as you heard tonight during public comment, a pretty polarizing issue. So beyond that, to execute this, there are, this does fall as labor, and it does fall under actually the federal guidelines, not typically the state guidelines. So there is a process to go through for this. And there's very little, in talking to some of the federal DOT staff, there's very little way around the process, which is a good thing, that there's an established process. But those are there to make sure that this is done correctly and it's done transparently. So it is not something that either from a time perspective, public works staff currently has the ability to do, nor kind of with that level of expertise, the required outreach, community, industry, focus groups that are required to go through. We do need to do some pretty in-depth policy research. And then ultimately there's a lot of legal drafting that has to get done. We would have to bring in consultants to do this work. So I did talk to 2 separate firms that specialize in nonpartisan community government engagement. Both of them have been involved with projects in the city in the past. So I do respect their opinions, and we did that at least initially. That missed a slide. To start trying to figure out a value of what would be required for that. And then additionally, we would need to bring in outside legal support to actually draft that. The number for the two of those, which apparently fell off the bottom of the slide, is approximately $400,000. So timing wise, to be clear, and we did talk to several other agencies that have gone through this, and the City of Seattle's staff came and spoke previously. So that was one of the examples that we used pretty closely, and their timeline was actually slightly longer than what you see on the page in front of you. But we would need to, from the time that there is funding, there's nothing in the budget right now associated with this. So once funding was available, procuring those professional firms is approximately a 6-month process. They would need, and this is where, in talking to two of the firms, just to get an understanding of the timing related to this, is where some of these numbers came from. But ultimately, we would need to develop an RFP and go out with a statement of qualifications and go through a procurement process. So developing the analysis and framework is about 2 months. Policy research is about 3 months. And then at that point, we can actually start trying to focus in on community and industry groups, which is about 2 months. The engagement process is designed to actually be fairly quick. So kind of a minimum time frame for that would be at 12 months. Findings and recommendations from those groups is another 2 months, and developing an initial CWA is about a month. That's once we have all the background information and policy guidance from council. That's pretty quick. Then we have to go out and negotiate this with multiple labor groups, and that is an extremely aggressive timeline at 6 months. And council adoption after that, just looking at a minimum council schedule of going to, effectively LUTC and then first and second reading for an ordinance, you're looking at 2 months. So from funding, this would be a 36-month process before anything could actually be implemented. So next steps, as I mentioned, there is no allocated funding for this in the budget. So if future funding is made available, Public Works will start the process for a request for proposals. As I mentioned a minute ago, based on the preliminary analysis that we did, the funding requirements that we would need for this, and this is, again, extremely low, this is pretty aggressive, would be $300,000 for that nonpartisan agreement. And then I did not talk to a specific legal firm, but talking to the nonpartisan government firms that do this work, as well as our own in-house city attorney, $100,000 is probably low, but it's a starting point for funding that. So the last thing, or the second to last thing I want to cover is that the council retreats, not this past year, but the year before and the year before that, Public Works was asked to identify all of the needs within the right-of-way and the funding amounts. So I dusted that off. We updated a couple of the numbers in this, but by and large, this is what council saw 2 years ago, which is the same thing council saw 3 years ago at the council retreat at that point too. So these are current unfunded needs within the right-of-way that, as I sit here right now, I do not have a plan to fund any of them, nor am I proposing to. But these are all things that council have expressed to us as goals that we have on our tracking list. So right-of-way vegetation management program, this one comes up just about this time of year, every single year, and it starts at the Aquatic Center and expands. The number we've been sharing with council is $100,000 to $250,000 per year for that, for a proactive vegetation management plan. The overlay program, one of the council goals that we have had for several years is to restore the paving ratings from 10 years ago by 10 years from now. We started to get to the point where we've turned the tide that we're not losing ground with the solid utility waste tax. However, to get to the point where we are actually making forward progress, not just maintaining, that does require, that number climbs pretty much every year. When we started talking about this 3 years ago, it was 1.6 million. Now we're up to 2 million per year for the next 10 years. Streetlight program, this is another topic that comes up. We have 181 streetlight locations right now that are approved. To fund that is $2.1 million in one-time costs. That excludes current or electricity for them. Neighborhood traffic safety program. So existing right now, we have $1.1 million of projects sitting in the approved category for that. School zone flasher modernization and conformance upgrades. That is a one-time cost of $275,000 that we haven't figured out how to fund yet. Litter prevention program. So this would be namely in the city core as well as down by the crossings. And that is effectively installing trash and recycling cans as well as upgrading some of the existing facilities, but it is purely providing receptacles, and that is $400,000 to cover the city. And it's a $60,000 per year cost to maintain that. ADA transition plan. So this is namely currently the sidewalk ramps only in the city center. And this is only non-conformances. The value on that is $6.7 million in 2021 value. And that only includes the city center. We still need to do the analysis for pretty much the rest of the city as well as all the city buildings. Unfunded identified need, and that's a scary number, and that B is correct. Projects on the city tip is $1.19 billion. So we're trying to get every grant we can get. So those are just the right of way. That's not buildings. It's not operations and maintenance facility. It's not the parks capital program, and it doesn't include staffing or any of the programmatic funding that we've been discussing. So with that, my recommendation at this, and the last thing I wanted to point out to council is that there is always a legal risk of being on the bleeding edge on any of these topics. That risk is certainly there on this topic. However, it's not something that we can easily quantify, and it was not quantified as part of this conversation. So there is many cities that have adopted these, and they've been challenged at a federal level and found fault. And effectively, the city has been out that initial investment, and they've had to either restart it or abandon it at that point. So, that is something that I do not have a way to quantify for council, what that legal risk is at this point, because there's too many variables. So, but I do want to share that is certainly out there. So those are kind of the very short synopsis of the research that we've done. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions or share. I think if you want to have this as a discussion, that is certainly fine as well.
Yes, I think a discussion would be great right now. I think that there's some questions that have council members that have. I mean, let me just first start off by saying, know that a CWA is just exactly that. It's just going to be my kind of preface to everything, any question here. CWA is just that agreement. It can be negotiated, whatever you put in there. The language can be specific or can't be specific. Some of the, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong with EJ, but some of the folks that have gotten in trouble, some of their CWAs have contained specific language. When you go into specific language, you put yourself out there for any type of lawsuits. So just kind of know that it's right size fit for whatever you want to do. How you put your language is very important, because that's where I just can't say that enough. As for zip codes, we all know that, yes, we are including zip codes. and everyone goes outside those zip codes to get that information on some of that. On the training and non-training, I believe the non-union, we're talking about also apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships and things that come into play to give the opportunity investment in our youth and our folks coming out of school that don't have that path to college, but the trades are one of them. So just kind of think about those things, and I'll just leave it at that for a while and take some comments for anyone else. If anyone wants to. Okay. Anyone else wanted to say or discuss anything other than that?
Yeah, Councilmember Bruce, Chair Baruso, I was kind of hoping to hear some other feedback because I'm assuming other council members have thoughts on it. But look, let me just be real and honest. That's ever since I ran for city council back in 2013, even before then, I've always considered myself as a advocate for working families. That should not be new to my colleagues. It shouldn't be new to those that know me. I've been wanting this for 8 years. And I think now, more than ever, I think it's that much more important for the reasons that we heard earlier, for the email that I've received, that you've all received, of why this is so important. I think it's easy for businesses and corporations to say the ceiling's falling down when, when that may not be the case. EJ, I appreciate this. I know that I would imagine it wasn't easy putting this together. And I certainly do have some questions about the specifics, but I think the question that is posed is how do we move forward with this? I think based on our conversations that we've had in recent times, this CWA fits the vision of the majority of the council. I'm only going to speak for myself, and that's I am absolutely on a mission to ensure that our young adults, young people, are not headed to jail. And having opportunities like this really sends out the message that our youth matter, our young people, young adults matter, and we're going to invest in you by providing as many opportunities as we can right here. And I think, when we talk about the penitentiary systems, people have done their time, we need to build a system that sets up people for success. And unions and CWAs and apprentices does just that. And I think that is absolutely important. And I'm not going to get into the facts of what was specifically said here. I do have concerns with some of the items that EJ has stated, but I think I'm confident. I know that he's done a thorough job in his research, but as with anything in the world of policy, there's always going to be some disagreements, and that's going to be okay. But I don't want to get into that aspect, but I think that we need to bring this back for further discussions, and as a committee, work on building a plan on how do we get to the finish line, even if it takes time, because we owe it to our families, we owe it to our constituents right here in Federal Way, and developing a plan that says we care about you, and it's absolutely important. So I think in terms of directions, I would float the idea of absolutely bring it back next month, and for further discussions, But you've heard kind of my 2 cents. You've heard my direction, and I'm gonna take a pause because I know that there's a lot of hands that are going up, and I'm gonna sit back and kind of listen, Chair Brusso, and then I may chime again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Seventhausen? She go? She disappeared?
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you, Council Chair Baruso, Committee Chair Baruso, and thank you, EJ, and EJ, thank you for your time. You have done a lot of work on this and through your emails, and so I do appreciate that. I don't have a lot to say, but to support what Greg and Martin have said, and also just to add a little bit to that. I'm one who always thought college was the one and only way for success. And until I realized that some of the kids do not have an opportunity or are not college bound. And so having this opportunity is really great, and I do support it. But also I know Representative Jesse Johnson has been working on this very diligently. So when we're talking about funding, it's probably something that we could put on our legislative agenda to get more funds to support this project. And also at the same time, what I'd like to say is Greg has said that this is not, we're not adopting or taking something that would jeopardize what our city's doing, but pick and choose what works for our community best. And so I think with that opportunity, there's room for adopting this the way it fits us. And I also believe that if it doesn't work for us, and at any point, if that is in the language, then I think we could tweak something here and there and make it fit our need. And so I believe people who don't support it, I really want to understand their concern. Outside of, I know they're concerned about unionization, but outside of that, what is it when we're saying and when we believe that it's going to support and help, especially those coming out of high school? And we already heard during the public comment people who have said how that has helped elevate them from where they would have otherwise been. And so I think this does deserve to be considered heavily and move forward. But again, we are willing, and I do support what Councilmember Baruso said, and that this can be adopted to fit our needs. And with that, I think I do support this conversation, this proposal, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member Tran.
Thank you, Chair Baruso, and thank you each for doing research on this subject. My comment on this subject is not about the pros and cons of this project. My concern is the financial price tags that's gonna create a big financial hole in our budget. As a chair of finance, my obligation, and as a council member, every one of us, our obligation is to make sure that we spend the least money possible, because we don't have unlimited amount of money to spend on the programs. Now, if the research that EJ did and the price tag is about $1 million, that's a lot of money. And we still have a lot of things that we don't have the money to taken care of, right? So for us to commit the city $1 million, I don't know where we can find that money. And the other thing is, with that $1 million, if we have that money, there are a lot of things that we could do for the people in the city. And I'm talking about the social program. I'm talking about homeless program. I'm talking about, you know, kids, young adult. But the fact of the matter is we don't have the money. A lot of us want our own project, right? We want to support something. Any one of us. We have projects that we care about. But, you know, for myself, there's a lot of things that I want to do that will cost money. But I have to remind myself that my obligation to this council and to the people of Federal Way is that I have to save money. We talk about financial responsibility, financial accountable. So for that reason, I don't think I can support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair Baruso, can I clarify one thing just before you
go ahead, DJ.
So yep, just to be, and I've heard this come up twice, so just to be very clear, there's 3 sets of numbers that I shared tonight. The $400,000 is what we need to actually to do a process to get a CWA or to not get a CWA. That's the cost of the process. The $1 million it's an annual cost, not a one-time cost, to maintain and operate a CWA. The third set of numbers, which we did not put a dollar amount to, but we referenced in terms of all of the increases, the 25% for swim, the 10 to 15% for solid waste. Those are the programmatic cost increases expected, again, using that conservative low estimate for the improvements or the cost increases to the capital projects themselves. So all 3 of those together can find the actual cost impacts to the city. So we can't pick one of those, or it's all, not one. So just to make sure we're understanding it.
Thank you, EJ.
Thank you, EJ.
And Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you, Chair Baruso. While I think it's admirable that we want to help people with apprenticeship programs, and I've always been a big supporter of that in the legislature, and I think it's also hopeful that we could get money from the legislature. I think that's a good thing. But, for me, we are the stewards of the public trust. We're the stewards of the public purse. That means the funds. We've talked many times about women and minorities being equal and being inclusive, but I'm wondering why we're going to exclude women and minority-owned businesses, which is exactly what you would do with the CWA. Here's the thing. You know how many seniors we have in our community who would be directly hurt by a 25% increase in swim, surface water management fees? Directly increased by solid waste, 10 to 15%, directly increased by increases in funding to the capital program. Of course, we never have enough money to do what we want. And we have so many other needs, not to mention the 1.9 billion with a B for the transportation improvement projects, which I'm hoping we're going to get some money from the federal government for. I think that while we have really high aspirations, you really have to really understand that there have been many other communities, as I understand, that have said no to this project because of the cost. That includes Tacoma and other cities. The only agencies that are embracing this are large agencies that can afford it, or possibly afford it, like King County, Seattle Public Schools. I don't see how we can afford this, but I really commend you all for your aspirations to do something good for the people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. Thank you, EJ, for putting this together. I know you've worked really hard on getting the information. So to the council members who want to move forward with this, how do you propose that we pay for it? And what do we take off the table? Because we already can't do some of the things that we want. The rental inspection program has been something for what, the last 18 months, and it has sat, not gotten done because of staff coming and going, and staff aren't being paid what they are getting at their new jobs, is what we're being told. I mean, we were told that tonight. We have some of our buildings that need maintenance. Look at the list. I mean, the list just grows every single year, and we're not touching that list. Although we did the front door at City Hall fixed this year, which is very nice. It works now and is awesome. So I'm very, very concerned as to the financial impact that this moving forward with this would have on our city budget. And for the council members that want to move forward, I'd like to know how you propose to pay for it. And where EJ's figures and information, if you don't agree with it, what is incorrect in what he has said, and where you're getting your information and your figures from. Thank you.
Okay. Committee Member Moore.
Thank you so much, Chair Brusso. EJ, it's my understanding that anybody can bid on a project. Is that correct? Non-union or entities can bid on a project. Is that correct?
Currently, yes. Under a CWA, maybe not, depending on how the CWA is negotiated. So the CWA requires some, at a basic level, representation by a union shop. So if it's an open shop company, no, that precludes them from bidding unless they agree to run the project as a union shop, which is a whole different can of worms. Okay. So in general, it precludes them.
So this really kind of goes back to what Chair Brusso said, which is it is incredibly, and this, EJ, thank you. This is to my policy partners. Thank you. It's so easy to say, oh my gosh, the ceiling's falling, we can't do this, close the books, we're done. It's incredibly easy to think like that. But this really truly goes back to what Chair Brusso said, which is policy can be built the way we want to build it, that best fits us in our city. And there can be phases, there can be whatever it may be. We can do it the way we do it. Just because others do it the way that it does or whatnot, it doesn't have to be right here in Federal Way. And so for me, I think that I'd like to request that this comes back to the next LUTC meeting for further discussions within this policy, because it's hard for us to communicate outside of this. And so I would request that we bring it back and add it for a discussion item on the agenda. And I think, I would like to have a working session of that pros and cons. How do we get that information? Because I think there's some unclarities, and again, EJ, I know that you've done your due diligence on this, and I appreciate it. And this is a hard topic, but I think that, we need to ensure that continue to vet this. I think is really important. So I'll take a pause here and just kind of see if anybody else wants to chime in. But I think it's hard. I think it's hard to do hard policies like this. But I think that's exactly why people send us to City Hall to do this type of work. I think, as Councilor Safadasan indicated, Councilor John, oops, not anymore. He got promoted. Representative Johnson has been doing a lot of work in this, and I think we can find a lot of partnerships within Representative Taylor and Senator Wilson, and we can. There's also opportunities for us to look to the federal government for funding to bring forth and to make things happen for us to continue to move forward. But I think closing the books and saying, yeah, we can't do this really, I think is in my personal opinion, an irresponsible thing for working families that work incredibly hard, that are often in the front lines, especially at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Savadasan.
Thank you again for the opportunity. And Martin kind of addressed it, but again, I think none of us want to bankrupt the city. We're very conscientious of budgeting, and so that is not what any of us is proposing. I think what we're saying is let's look to sources. And Council President Honda, I had already, I think we've talked about State Legislator, Representative Johnson, who's willing and who's been doing this work. So going to him to see if there's any kind of partnership or funding availability for that. Or like Martin said, reaching out to our federal lobbyists and people who could possibly help us. And so I don't think it's a matter of bankrupting the city. I think it's a matter of seeing what works best for our people. And I think this program actually helps include people who otherwise are left behind and who are not included in the process of getting livable wage jobs, because they don't either have the training, and if they have the training, they're not guaranteed any jobs. This way, I do believe that they will have the jobs that they're qualified to work in once they get the training. So I or any of us want the city to give up something to do this, but find ways to really fund this project in such a way that we can do what we all set out to do and what our passion is about. So, and this is something that we could take on and work on and see how we can get other funding, leverage it. And also, I think further discussion with the WEA. And again, I will say that Chair Barusa has stated it very clearly that this could be tweaked or in the contract language, that we don't damage what we have for our city, but make it inclusive so people do get livable jobs in our community within our zip codes that do benefit and help our people to be self-sufficient with their lives, or otherwise, what is their option but to work jobs that they get paid minimum wage or less just to make ends meet. And we do want to uplift people, and I think this is a great way of accomplishing that. So I hope you all hear and understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to bankrupt the city, but I'm trying to elevate those people who would be elevated this way. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Tran.
Thank you, Chair Caruso. I agree with the committee members more that we can make any policy we want to. All we need is a majority of people, and then we can pass anything we want. But at the same time, I want to remind myself that, is that a good policy? I don't mean to not helping the people that needed help. I don't want to turn my back away from them. But I'm questioning that beside this program, I believe there are many other programs that we could support and help these people, and not implement something that going to create a financial negative impact on our city, and in return impact the people in this community. Councilmember Coach Ma mentioned about the potential increase for a senior citizen, minority people with low income. Now they have to pay more to support this program. Then is that the policy we want to implement? Is that something we want to pass? So, we just need to be careful about this. We might benefit one group of people, but then at the same time, we create additional problems for other group of people. So that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you, Chair Barroso, and thank you, Councilmember Tran. That's exactly what I was going to say. Well, we're trying to help one segment of the population. We're actually taxing another segment of the population, of which it will hurt the most are the people on fixed incomes. I believe what was said previously was that over a 5-year period, by excluding women and minority-owned businesses, that it would increase our capital projects by 15%. 15% over a 5-year period is $300,000. So, it's not, I don't think we have the right to run our city on a wing and a prayer, on a hope that something will happen, on a desire to do good for one section but hurt another section. I think that we need to understand that we are representing a huge population, 100,000 people with many needs. And when I was in the legislature, fully in support of apprenticeship programs. I think it's absolutely fabulous way to go, and it's something that the legislature is supporting. So we're not going to support apprenticeship programs. We're going to hire union members who then hire people from the apprenticeship programs that are supported by the state legislature. So, perhaps there are other ways we can help the people who are looking for retraining, which I hope we will do, without taxing a huge segment, all of the people in our population. So I just think that before we move forward, and if we're going to discuss anything, we need a solid plan, a solid numbers to work with. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Remember more than Council President Honda?
Oh, he's talked twice. I've only talked once.
Okay.
Well, I'm on the committee, Council President Honda.
I also went by hand, so,
Right, and I'm also on the committee.
I got it. So, do you?
But I'll go ahead and defer and hand this
I was
off
going to
to
ask you if you
Council
would
President Honda,
Thank
but
you.
I'm surprised to hear her say that because she knows that committee members go first, then people outside of the committee goes. Thank you, Chair Barroso.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Well, at this
Councilor
point,
Honda.
this seems to be an open discussion among all the council members that are here. And
This is
if
a
the
committee
council
meeting.
members on the committee did speak first in the beginning. So thank you.
It's a committee meeting.
It's okay. Let's just let her talk, please. Council President.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing Councilmember Morrissey and Councilmember Asefa Dawson saying is that to do this study for this, to move forward, that we should go to the state and to the federal government for funding. That's what I'm hearing. And so I'm wondering then if a plan could be put together to see if the state and the federal government would fund this study. and how soon they would fund the study. If I'm hearing that incorrect, I would like you to tell me, because that's what I'm hearing. I also agree that not everyone needs to go to college. In fact, we don't have enough people who can do the trades. That is in our face. It's, if you are trying to get anything done, like I need a plumber, 3 weeks out to get a plumber to replace a faucet. I mean, we obviously need people who can do these jobs. They're well-paying jobs. But
It's on. They can hear you.
sorry, my microphone just went out. Sorry. We have, I would agree with Councilmember Tran that there are other programs that we can support that would provide the training that we're all talking about and to support our working families. Coming out of this pandemic, it's going to be a different world, and we don't know what that looks like right now, but we do know that we're going to need to support families in federal way, and we need to find ways to do that. And I think that we can support the programs that have training for these trades. But I just don't think that moving forward at this point with this is something that the city can afford to do. But if I'm wrong in that, and if you guys, if you know a way that we can get the funding to do this, I'm more than open. I'd like to find out how we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee Member Moore, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bruce. I know this is a difficult to manage meetings that are covering big topics and big policy areas. And you know, again, I was actually going to hand it off to Council President Honda, but the reality is this is a committee meeting. Committee members go first. It is between the hours that this meeting goes on for. So, but I'm just going to keep moving forward here, and that's I believe, and I'm going to connect with Representative Johnson and other stakeholders, and with our federal lobbyists, thanks to Councilmember Kochmar and her efforts in that, to see what the likelihood of it is to get the funding for us to study this issue. I have just emailed Rebecca. I know that you're on here for the PowerPoint presentation. I wish I could get that. You know, quick question, EJ, and that's what does it cost for Seattle to manage their program?
So the capital costs for the software monitoring, and there was a third. And I can, council member, if there's something specific on the PowerPoint you want to see, I can certainly pull it back up. I just minimize my screen that way you council members could have a discussion seeing each other, not my screen.
Yeah, I mean that's a great idea, but there's just so much in my head that I couldn't exactly pinpoint to one specific item. But
certainly,
yeah.
So
Thank you.
I can answer your question too.
Yeah.
So for the software monitoring, third-party enforcement, Seattle's paying, according to their budget and according to their DOT director, $550,000 per year. Plus they pay for multiple full-time benefited positions. So they're paying a little over $1 million a year to administer their program. So what we did was we prorated that 550 by our capital budget. So they're looking at their capital budget versus ours. Some of the things like software, the cost is going to be the same. You know, you don't get a discount for using the software less. And we came up with it was about 850 is the number on an annual basis. It includes 2 full-time benefited employees, everything that goes with that. It includes, all the third-party stuff you got to do to actually administer this. And that's where that number came from. Now,
sorry.
Beyond that, Seattle also includes on a time-to-time basis, whether it's in this budget or others. So DOT has something in their budget this year where they're putting in additional training dollars that they are handing to some of the unions to provide training. So that's not included in either one of those numbers. So to get to your question, to get a true down to the penny number, it's more than that, but that's not a number that, based on the amount of research we've done, I'm confident that I could accurately share at this point.
Okay. Is there, based on your studies, there could be a phased-in approach to the CWA, correct?
So it's been tried. Portland tried that. Now Portland's got appealed. But ultimately, a CWA is not just a policy document. It is not something that council can negotiate amongst the council members and say, this is what it is. It's effectively a contract that we are negotiating with multiple outside agencies, being various labor unions. And it's got to be agreement, the final document that gets signed has to have an agreement from both parties. So is there room to negotiate some of the phase-in, as you're mentioning? Maybe. Until we get to the point where we're actually negotiating that, maybe there is, maybe there's not. I mean, that's going to come down to what the various labor agencies, which maybe it was one of the ones we heard from tonight. Maybe it's them plus more. Maybe it's completely different labor agencies. I don't, that's going to be dictated by the community, not any of us. I don't have an answer to that. So what gets negotiated at the table? Sure, it's possible, but I don't think we can put our eggs in that basket either. I think we have to be prepared for it's all or none.
Yeah, I guess what's causing me to ask this question is there certainly is a lot of costs to getting this program prepared, is what your research is showing.
Yes.
And my colleagues are quite nervous about that, and which I understand. And there's a lot that it takes to get the CWA in place. And that's where my line of thinking is. Is there an ability, or is there a way to kind of phase this so it's not like a bam, we're going to do this. It's a $2 billion program. I'm making that up. So that way it's eased in, working towards it. It's going to happen.
So yes and no. The cost to do the required community outreach, industry outreach, negotiate an agreement, the legal cost to do all that, whether we do it for a 1-page document or a 100-page document using, kind of your analogy of just pulling numbers, those costs are, like I said, estimated low, but it's $400,000 is the numbers that we're receiving. The cost for salaried employees, the costs for software, they're all pretty fixed, and they're not really scalable. The cost where I think your point has some merit for council to discuss is the impacts to the programs. So that is the piece that, maybe we only apply it to X or we only apply it to Y, and that can change some of the cost implications to the capital programs themselves. But that just shy of $1 million a year and that upfront, the startup costs, it doesn't impact those. So, and again, I go back to the same thing. I mean, if council says we're not going to do this for any project under, and I'm just pulling numbers for the sake of conversation. That, you know, these are not based on anything, and I don't have the CIP plan in front of me to tell you where they fit in the bill. But, you know, if we say we're only going to apply this to projects over 25 million, and we look at the CIP across parks, across swim, across public works, across streets, and there's one project that fits that, labor may come back and say, no way, we're not willing to play a game with that. You know, the number needs to be 10 million, 5 million, whatever they come back with. That even if council says we're going to phase it and here's the level, that may not be acceptable at the end of the day. Now, you know, the labor unions may say it is, or they may say, you know, if you give us this concession, we'll do that. But ultimately, it turns into a labor negotiation. So, you know, we are not holding all the cards, and we are not the only player at the table in this discussion.
Okay. Let me just kind of backtrack for a second. And that's, you keep mentioning that there's going to be staffing that's going to be involved with this. I'm of the opinion, and I'm generically speaking here, EJ, that the beauty to policy and the beauty to budgeting is creative things can happen, correct?
I'm sorry, can you say the last part of that again?
That policies and with budgeting, one could be creative and innovative, correct? It doesn't have to be a black and white. I think you need more context.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I apologize. Where I'm getting at is, I mean, there could be an opportunity where we don't necessarily have to hire 2 staff members. We could do look to King County to do a job share, looking at those outside the box approaches to ease that cost, at least for temporarily. Couldn't there be such a thing that could be perhaps looked into?
Potentially. So Seattle School District does some of that.
Right.
Some of it, no. Some of it we ultimately are going to be responsible for, no matter, you know, Seattle School District outsources some of it, but other legal components they have to do in-house. But certainly that's something that can be explored.
Perfect, and I appreciate that answer, and that just kind of goes back to what I'm hoping my colleagues will understand, and that's, this doesn't have to be a black and white thing. That's what these are the costs. This is what's going to be and whatnot. This is going to take time for innovativeness, outside the box thinking of how do we. Sorry, my screen just went off. How do we navigate this to get to a yes? And that's where I think more studying needs to go into this. And I think that next month we should come back and study the costs a little bit more, and the financial implications, if that's what it is. Perhaps we'll come back with more information, and that's being posed right now. But I think this does not deserve, let's close the doors. I think, if anything, the job of a committee is to study issues. Let's do that. Let's study this issue, continue to study it, because there's clearly is a lot of questions. So let's put that on the table and come back and look at various factors of the costs, of what could be done, and again, and have those conversations in the committee. So that's, I see that there's another hand. I'm going to take a pause. Thank you.
Okay. Council President Honda, you had your hand up still. Did you have another question before I go to Councilmember Koshmar?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Go ahead. I'll let you go. And then
so, thank you. So, perhaps Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Baruso and Sefa Dawson as 3. Excuse me, that won't work because 2 of you are on the committee, so you couldn't meet. That would be breaking a rule. But perhaps you could somehow have a discussion as to how to have a discussion at the next LUTC meeting about this, because the numbers are numbers, and as council members, we go to staff to get this kind of information, And if you can produce different numbers and how we could get the funding, I think I believe that's what Councilmember Moore is talking about doing. I would like to know what that is, but I did not mean to say that Councilmember Barroso and Councilmember Moore should get together and talk about this in a meeting, because they can't, because that would be a quorum of LUTC and they cannot do that. So forget I said that, but maybe you could meet with Councilmember Mustafa Dawson, 2 and 2.
Okay. Councilmember Coach Moore.
Hey, thank you, Chair Barroso. I've been looking at the figures we're talking about, and I can see where Billy Hetherington is still on Carpenters Union, whom I like a lot. He is still on our participation list. And so I'd like to talk to him. So if the figures are correct that over a 5-year period, we lose 15% on our $200 million capital projects. And so that would be 300,000. Well, if you divide that by 5, that means 60,000 more per year that could go to the unions. That's pitiful. That's a small amount of money for the unions. I don't believe the unions want to put our city at risk for such a huge financial loss just to produce this benefit. So that it would be all union members. And so I would wonder if they're using the city of Federal as a toehold to get other cities to also participate. So I'm just concerned that we're fair with everyone, because I'm old enough to remember how difficult it was to get women hired in the construction industry and minority-owned businesses. And it was something that had to come through legislation. So I just want to be fair with everybody, and I want to make sure that we support union members, because living wage jobs are wonderful. But I also am concerned about the amount of taxes that might be included in this whole program. And before we jump into anything, I want a clear understanding of where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mustafa Dawson.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, everyone. I think at the end of the day, we all want the best for our community, for our city, and for all the hard work that the staff puts in. So I just want to say thank you for this discussion. And I think we're still figuring out what it is that we can do. So I hope that we can do this collaboratively. And so if there's anyone else who, Councilmember Moore had said he would talk to state legislators and other opportunities. So I think what we should agree on is, let's all collectively look at the benefits, and the pros and cons as to. I do know EJ just put that in front of us, but if some of these things are negotiable, if we can find the funds from where we said we could find the funds, then maybe this is really doable. Maybe it's not, but that's what this conversation is about. So I just want us to be in a space that we're agreeing. And yes, Council President Honda, I think maybe some of us could discuss this outside of this to see what we can work on individually. But I think at the end of the day, honestly, we're all saying, let's help our community, let's help our citizens, let's also make sure that our city benefits from this. So I just wanted to add that piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? Committee Member Moore.
Thank you so much, Chair Barroso. Who's the attorney that's here? I can't see the name. Chair Barroso, do we know Eric Rhodes?
I think it's Eric is. Yes.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that. So, Eric, is there? And I'm just again, forgive me because I'm just thinking out loud here. Could there be a special meeting that's on the calendar that meets the Open Meeting Act that Councilor Safa, Dawson, myself, and Barroso can meet. Obviously, it would be a public meeting. Anybody would be welcome to come to it, but it gives us a chance to have a working meeting. And maybe that's not. It's I don't know. Is something like that feasible? Maybe it's I don't know. I mean, maybe Councilor Savadasan or Chair Bruce may not like the idea, and that's okay. But I'm just kind of curious. Eric, thank you.
Legally, that is feasible. You could add a meeting to your schedule as long as it is properly noticed to the public.
Right. So it could be like a study session.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
You're looking to have a study session with just particular folks that you're asking for.
I'm sorry, Chair Bruce. Can you say that again?
I said, you're just looking to get a study session with particular folks, I take it. What you want to do?
I'm trying to play off of what Council President Honda was saying, which is the three of us can maybe meet in an open setting. People can attend if they want, for the purpose of how to move forward with the proposing the next steps forward at the next LUTC.
Okay. I see what you're saying. So, go ahead. Want to say something?
No, it's okay. Nope.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, this discussion is for both sides. I appreciate what EJ has put down and shown us. And as you can see, this is just start of a compelling session that goes back and forth, and that's just going to happen when this comes up. EJ and I have discussed timing on this, about how long it's going to take. We know this is something that if we move forward, we have to vet out correctly to be fair to both sides. We only heard from so many sides tonight on public comment, and so I feel that it would be fair to continue the talks for what we need to do. So if you want to talk, committee member, more about ledge action, then we can do that. And I'd like to see what the impacts of the programs are, and ask EJ to come back possibly on our next meeting to talk about impacts on other and with ordinances a little further out, beyond or find what city impacts, what other cities around on the West Coast possibly look like, to come back maybe with that, and then we can kind of see where everyone else lays. Maybe get that by then, get this information. But this is something that's going to be, like EJ had mentioned, and we have discussed before, is something that comes out to both sides. You have to hear both sides out. We don't have all the facts. We have the facts that EJ has, and I thank you for that, EJ, because that is important for us. But we also need to find out exactly for ourselves where exactly everyone is with this, how the ordinances came about, what the impacts were to their cities, what kind of impacts, different impacts there were, what the future impacts could be, because there's a lot here. We're not going to settle this tonight. I kind of figured that was going to happen, but I wanted to hear everyone and look at EJ's list again just to make sure where we're going with this. So I'd like to go forward with that, so we can again vet this out. For me, it's turning everything, vetting everything out correctly. I've always said the more you rush things, the more information it becomes misinformation. We can't make our right decisions. And so there's a lot of compelling information, like I said before. Like I preface that with this, is that we need to make sure everything's right. Again, EJ's information from the city side is numbers, yes. But let's take a look and see what else is out there before we put this to bed. I didn't want to go down that route and say, okay, we're done with it. I did want the discussion. And EJ and I talked about bringing it to it, and we knew this is going to be a big, long discussion. So in that spirit of that, I think that we should go ahead and move forward and go for next May's meeting, have another discussion on it, and see where we're at. And we can talk about committee member more. If you want to talk about, a study session between us, let's talk offline on that one to see how you want that phased in, or how do you want that to look like. And so, because everyone's time is important too, so we need to move forward and be ready by May if that's the case. EJ, that okay? Or
yeah, the only question I have is, what are you looking for me to present? I mean, And if council just wants to have a discussion amongst yourselves, certainly that's easy because I don't have to present anything. But if you're looking for me to present something, I guess I'm not clear on what exactly.
I'm kind of
that
looking to
is.
see if you would go out to a little further out and see what ordinances are out there, what the impacts were for cities a little further.
Broader geography wise?
Yeah, little broader geography.
Chair Bruce, can I add to that a little bit?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, we are members of the NL's National League of Cities, and so I think there's opportunities there for some support for research as well. So I think looking at what were their costs when putting such a program together, I think it is a valuable thing. And Chair Bruce, so thank you. This in no means does it deserve for us to put it to bed. This is clearly there's an interest on the council. Whether it's the majority or not, there is an interest. And so I think continuing to vet it out, I think is the right thing to do. So I appreciate that comments. Thank you for that. And while I may disagree with my colleagues on some of your statements, it is fine. It's what makes government strong and what makes a democratic government unique, in that we all allowed to disagree, and yet move forward. So I look forward to seeing if we can address, if there's a way to address some of those concerns as well. And so I think the beauty of the policy and the beauty of the budgeting is there's opportunities for innovative, outside the box thinking. It's just a matter of, is there a will to do that? And so I'll leave it to that, Chair Bruce. So thank you.
Thank you.
So,
okay,
Chair,
Go ahead.
the one thing I will just, I don't know what the right word is, but looking at timelines, this initially came up in January, and it took us effectively 3.5 months to get to the level that we have research that we have now. I will do everything I can to turn that around in a month, but a lot of this, especially if we're going broader geography, relies on other cities, whether it's their public works director, their HR director, somebody typically getting on the phone to discuss this, because a lot of it they don't want to put in writing, has been my experience. So I'm not sure realistically I'm going to be able to pull that off in 2 weeks, which is what it would have to be at the next LEPC meeting. So
okay, I mean, the only thing really, if Alicia gives an update where you are with that. I don't.
Sure.
Everything, again, the timeline that I have in my head is even if how we vet this out, where this goes, you and I discussed this, and you've seen it on your presentation, it's something that's down the road here that we have to really vet out and be able to do this correctly. Again, I don't want to rush it. I don't want to rush you, because I know it's also time, and I know it takes time to get all these answers. So if we at least have an update by the next one to see where we're at, that's great. And then in the meantime, committee member Moore, if you want to do some action on that, again, we can talk about getting together. But there's work to do. It's obvious by our discussion just about, right, that we have a lot of work to do on this to make sure this is done correctly on both sides. And we owe it to everyone for that. So, and I think Councilmember Kochmar, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair Barroso. I'll keep it short. My suggestion to you, Chair Barroso, is to make sure that we keep it local, because our local market is so different than Alabama or anything to do with NLC. We need to keep it local within our own parameters here. So that would be my own suggestion. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. And I didn't want to go that further out, EJ. If I made that, I'd say maybe just down the West Coast sometime, just so we're close. So we have to see, right? There's other things out there. It's just kind of get the national level to see where people are at with it, and then we can kind of go from there. And just not, you don't have to go East Coast. I'm not worried about that. East Coast, East Coast. Like I said, I'll look for updates further down meetings. And again, we take our time, we take our time. If it's going to take X amount of hours and X amount of time to get it done, let's just do it then.
Sure.
Until we do everything out.
Yeah, and I'm happy to bring back an update next month. I guess I just want to be realistic that, like I said, it took 3 months just to get the King County cities information. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull off, even if it's within 100 miles of the city of Federal Way, within 2 weeks.
Oh, I get it.
I
get it.
Just trying to be realistic and set expectations accordingly.
No, I'm fine with that. Because like I said, it's going to take a while. So something evens your timeline there. Thank you. Alrighty. We want to move forward to any other business then. Anybody else have anything? If not, our next meeting is May 3rd, 5 o'clock.
My hand was up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I see it now. Thank you. Council President Hoffman, go ahead.
So I would suggest that I'm a big believer that council members should do as much research as we can on items and topics. And NLC has a wide range of information available to council members. So maybe council member Moore could go on to their page and find where this would fit and get some research done, because they do have quite a bit of information on all sorts of topics. I don't know if they have any on this, but I would imagine that they might.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
It would, and maybe even AWC.
Can I ask a question, Chair Baruso?
Go ahead.
Council President Honda, I'd like to find out do we have a point of contact for NLC? I don't know how that works. I can give you a call after this, but.
Sure. I believe it's Kirk. He was the one who came and spoke with us when we became members.
I can help you with that.
The NLC meeting that we were just recently at, he was the one who I communicated with. So he's the West Coast person.
Great. Thank you, Council President. And I just heard Councilmember Savadasan saying that she'd be able to work with me on that. So I will gladly take that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty. So again, our next meeting, May 3rd, 5 o'clock. Thank you everyone for this robust discussion on our last item. Long meeting, but I'll see everyone tomorrow. So I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.